here with Eric, who operates the News Coulomb YouTube channel. Eric, welcome to the Out of Spec Bits.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you.
And just to get to know you a little bit, how long have you been driving an EV?
I was just crunching the numbers. So pure battery electric, it's only been a little over 8 years, but I've been driving plugins for it'll be 14 years this year. So extended range EVs plugins, yeah, for almost 14 years now. So
Mm,
it's a long time.
that's before the Leaf, right?
No, the Leaf came out in 2010. So, and then the Chevy Volt technically came out in 2010, but it was really 2011. And so I got my first Chevrolet Volt in 2011. So,
Ah, you were a Volt owner. I didn't know that.
yeah. So,
And besides the Volt and the Bolt, what EVs have you owned or operated or, had in the family or whatever?
just in terms of owning those are it, right? Like, and then of
Wow.
course I have a couple of
8 years?
range.
Wow.
Yeah,
Is it, how many bolts have you had then?
just one.
Dang. Holy
Yeah.
smokes. How does that
So
work? I mean, how do you keep the bolt running for that long? I mean, are
I'm
you like
about to
a,
do an 8 year update, so
oh, okay.
I'll keep you posted on that. But no, it's actually been one of the most problem free vehicles I've ever owned. Let alone just like yeah, it's just solid like a rock. I don't know if Chevrolet still uses that advertising anymore,
I
but
remember, yeah.
yeah, no, it's been great. And then I'm restoring a couple of Ford Ranger EVs, so
Okay.
those will hopefully. And then of course I've done some car reviews. I've driven some other EVs. Uh, I test drove a Spark EV. I actually reviewed a Kia Niro EV, a Kia EV6. So, and then of course, I've reviewed most generations of the Chevrolet Bolt EV, so I kind of got to see the evolution over time. How the product evolved, and then of course we're looking forward to the 2026 is what it's going to come out
I think
as.
it's going to be
So
2026. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, I've gotten to kind of see all iterations, but really it's been limited to CCS1 EVs, not really anything else.
And the reason why I asked for you to join is because the recent Toyota opening of its first station underneath its program with EVGo is a continuation of EVGo practices where they engage with automakers. I
Right,
know around me, I've crossed paths with many EVGo stations that have Nissan written on them as well,
right.
going back for 10 years, from what I understand. And since you've been a CCS EV owner for as long as you have, and you've also actually visited the Toyota site that has now officially opened,
Right.
can you give us a perspective on what the Toyota, it's called Impact program, correct?
Yeah, it's impact with an E vision, I believe is what they call it. But that was always my that sort of criticism of them is that they're pretty short in details, right? They're not giving a whole lot of information, even to the point where they talk about their funding of electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging. It almost seems like the funding is conflated, right? So maybe they're talking about opening a battery plant, maybe they're talking about funding for their hybrids or what. So it's not even clear what this impact vision is going to be in terms of raw numbers. I think I mentioned it, like EVgo with GM. They were pretty clear from the very beginning of the number of chargers they were going to be building, the number of different regions where they're going to be building. All we know from Toyota is there's funding and we're going to be building chargers and we're going to be working with EVgo to do it. So that's pretty much all we really got out of them.
And EVgo as a CPO has, as I said, worked with automakers in the past. You mentioned General Motors, I mentioned Nissan, and now we have Toyota.
Mm-hmm.
And so there seems to be some synergy there. Do we think that's why they selected EVgo? Because they're they're very familiar with the process of working with an automaker, or
I think that is probably part of it. I remember the 2022 LA Auto Show. If you went to the Toyota booth in the Toyota location for their EVs and plug-in vehicles, as well as Subaru, right, with the Solterra, they featured EVgo charger displays plugged into the vehicles. Right, they weren't real powered-up chargers, but there was clearly branding and labeling from EVgo, and I think yeah, part of it does have to do with their history. And then I think part of it has to do with their acceptance of funding, maybe, because I haven't seen Electrify America accept funding in the same way, or at least through the same channels. They kind of go through their VW funding channel first, and it sounds like they're maybe opening it up. But with EVgo, they've been very open about funding from different automakers. And my guess is it's a combination of that history and then knowing how to say, hey, look, Toyota, you're not going to be on the hook for the whole cost of this site. One of the things I noticed on the chargers at this Toyota location at the Sacramento Arden Fair is they also had the Cal EVIP sticker on it, meaning they were getting some funding from that as well. And we've seen that even with the Ultium and then GM Energy chargers with the EVgo. They've also had funding from different clean air rebate groups and whatnot within the region where they're being installed. So I think it's a combination of a number of different factors. Like you said, a long history of working with automakers, a turnkey solution that Toyota can literally just say, hey, look, you know what? I think our drivers would appreciate some chargers in this location. And then EVgo says, yeah, we can do that. And then just a combination of the funding from different channels. So I think it's a confluence of a lot of different factors would be my guess. And then, just a long history of working with automakers. So
yeah, it's really intriguing, and I'm curious your thoughts on where you think it might be headed in the future before we actually get to the station that actually opened, and we can
yeah.
delve into that in just a second. Do you have any thoughts or opinions on, is this like a single station, a one and done, thank you very much, goodbye, or a couple stations? I know we don't have specific detailed information, but just your opinion on what you've gathered so far.
I I think this is definitely just the beginning, right? So, two stations so far, um, and there was a decent amount of lead time knowing that they were coming. Um, but when you look at where they're located, too, I have a feeling that Toyota is probably following their own heat maps in terms of dealerships, Toyota ownership. So it isn't really surprising that the first two locations would be in California. Um, but I would expect that they're probably going to supplement the GM Energy EVgo. So not the Pilot Flying J, and I think people will get those two confused. But there's a separate funding channel just for GM Energy and EVgo that's focused on metropolitan charging. And it looks like that's also what Toyota is doing with these, where they're focusing on city centers. And so I expect that they'll probably follow in line with what GM is doing, and then just sort of piling on to that. So these will be in addition to the GM Energy EVgo stations we see going in roughly, I think it's like 50 metropolitan regions around the country.
Okay, so you've actually been to this site that has now officially opened and been commissioned and is actually charging electric vehicles now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's one thing to discuss it, but it's another thing to actually be there and experience the site that's open and operational. What was your sense as you spent time at the station where there might be unique elements for the Toyota's project, if any, or is it just a generic EVgo site and thank you very much, we put a sticker on it and off we go? Or
Well,
is there something specific that you felt was unique to the because as you say with the GM ones, they're pretty standardized, and they have the GM wraps. I also understand the GM um, uh, energy team somehow gets to select the locations and a few other things. So, anyway, what were your thoughts on the station itself and as it relates to the Toyota Impact program?
So I did have to laugh because the entire time I was there, I didn't see a Toyota EV. I was joking because it was two Toyota Mach E's plugged in and charging. No, I think it's hard to tell whether there's a specific design element that caters to Toyota. The site was unique in its design in a few different elements, but I can't really say that I can't really say that it's catering specifically to Toyotas. The one thing that stood out, of course, is we're now in the sort of NAX J3400 era where you expect to see a NAX plug at at least one at every station. There weren't any; these were all CCS1, which I have seen from some GM Energy EVGo locations as well. And so with Toyota currently not using the NAX J3400 plug, that's probably a reason for it. And I would anticipate until they officially do plan to include them on their vehicles, it will probably remain CCS1 only. One of the other things, and this isn't again unique to the Toyota EVGo partnership, is these were just standard pull-in stalls. Of course, they were broken up so that they were actually pull-in, where the chargers are at the head of the parking space, and then chargers actually in between the parking stalls, so that you can pull in, and if your plug is in the rear, you don't have to back into the space necessarily. But there was no pull through, right? So, and again, Toyota doesn't really make any vehicles that actually have pull through or towing capability. So a pull through stall isn't strictly necessary. And then again, if this is urban support, that makes sense. But one of the things that stood out to me, and again, I don't know that this is going to be unique to Toyota at all. It could simply be the age of the site too, from when it was initially designed. But the charging cabinets for the 350 kilowatt Delta units were basically placed right next to the dispenser, which I haven't really seen at any other site. Usually you see the charging cabinets all together in one location. And then they feed dispensers that are dispersed through the parking stall. So that was a kind of a unique thing. I'm not sure if it's a cost saving because we know EVGo is currently working on their prefab layout where they just basically drop 3 or 4 of these Delta chargers in a row with very limited expense in terms of placing them. So this is a bit of a deviation from that. So I don't know if this is something that Toyota specifically asked for, or if it's just something that was unique to this particular location. But it certainly didn't look like a prefab. It looked like a purpose designed, purpose constructed, built
I agree. That is
location. So
curious. Yeah, that's curious. I haven't seen that before either. And I wonder because Toyota globally seems to be talking down electric vehicles, but Toyota North America seems to be ramping up very quietly and not trying to
right.
get under the watchful eye of Toyota Global. And so it almost feels like Toyota North America is gearing up to play ball in the EV space. We've got the new battery plant coming on at line in North Carolina. We've got word of production of a mid-size SUV, full battery electric coming. And
Yeah.
obviously that's a money maker right there. Everyone tries to get the full-size SUV as a Kickstarter, and now we're starting to see them uh, begin a process of having Toyota branded chargers deployed through a partnership. And so it seems like to me that they're actually, globally, they're speaking one thing, but in North America, they're doing something else. And I don't know if you're picking up the same thing that I am, but that is kind of what I'm starting to interpret. That
Yeah, yeah, Toyota has always been a bit of an odd duck in the EV space, right? Like I've mentioned, I've made fun of them for what I still consider poor advertising choices, right? Like that's calling a hybrid a self-charging EV. It doesn't, especially for someone who's an EV purist. It doesn't seem to jive, right? Like with any sort of a mission towards electrification. And while it's on my mind, and I'm not going to remember who to attribute it to, but I do remember hearing someone talking about how we shouldn't be taking the Japanese automakers too harshly in terms of EVs, because if we look at their domestic market and within Japan, power generation, where they get their power from, things like that, for that use case, like within their home country, plug-in hybrids do maybe make a little bit more sense than they would in a larger market, right? But that being said, I also think people forget how early on we are in EV adoption, right? Because I know people use the diffusion of innovation curve, the EV adoption curve, but that diffusion of innovation curve was really designed for new technologies, right? Not a technology that's replacing something. They say diffusion of innovation for a PC. Well, that PC isn't replacing a technology. It's brand new. You're filling your home with a brand new technology, where an electric vehicle is more of an evolution of a current technology, right? And not only that, it's an expensive thing, right? You're not just going out and buying a new car every year. And so the diffusion of innovation curve doesn't necessarily jive, because if we look at it as market penetration, there are 300 million cars on the road in the United States right now. EVs have basically made, pure battery electrics have basically made a 1%.
1%, yeah.
Right. So we are still in the innovator stage. We're not even to the early adopter stage. So I think history is going to look at Toyota maybe a little bit differently than right now what we do as like EV purists, right? Where they're testing out all sorts of different technology, hybrids, plug-in hybrids, hydrogen, right? So it's not like they've just been sitting around doing nothing. They've been innovating and testing things that no one else was really willing to test, or with any sort of sustainment. So if they then decide, right, maybe 10 years, 15 years on, we can say, well, we told you so, but how would we have known if they hadn't tried? Right. And so I think we can give, I think, Toyota a little bit of grace and a little bit of credit for, of the automakers that didn't commit to full battery electric vehicles, they've probably done the most to offset carbon and emissions and fuel costs and fuel economy through their hybrids and plug-in hybrids. So, I never want to, I never want to be hard on a company for doing the right thing, right? So if they're making this transition now, it's better late than never. But welcome to the party, Toyota, is the way I look at it. But I do get that sort of consternation from the pure, the EV purists who say this is one of the largest automakers in the world. Why aren't they doing more? Of course, I think the 500-pound gorilla in the room is China, right? So when you say that, Toyota globally, or maybe in North America, there's more of this shift, I think they're looking to these Chinese automakers too, who, even make Toyota look small, to be perfectly honest. Like
It's
you're
starting to
talking
be that
about,
way.
yeah. So I think maybe, Toyota is reading the writing on the wall and saying, you know what, I think we can put our foot down and get our name out there, connected with EV charging, with EV models. So
Well, exciting times. We have our first Toyota electric vehicle charging station now
yeah,
live and operational in the state of California. So
yes. And there are two, so I don't. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought there was just one that opened. The second one opened as well?
No. So technically, the one I went to was the second one.
Okay.
The first one was Baldwin Park in Southern California, and that's that's where I like to jokingly say Baldwin Park not only got the first In-N-Out ever opened, but now also the first Toyota Charger, public DC charger ever opened. So
Okay.
yeah, so they're basically close enough to having the same open date, but I think technically the Baldwin Park opened first, and then this one in Sacramento opened.
Well, even better. Now we've got two for the price of one.
Yeah, exactly.
Eric, much appreciated for coming on.
All right. Thank you very much, Walter.